So in the grand scheme of things, the 100 always had a lot of things stacked against it and going against it for being as successful as it was. For one, it was on the CW, which is home to shows like Nancy Drew, Riverdale, Batwoman, The Flash, and so many other shows. At this point, the CW has basically just become a joke of itself, where everybody's like, man, this seems like a CW show. Basically just meaning, man, this seems like a badly written show that is inherently garbage.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
But not only was it on the CW, but it was also a show that came at the height of the young adult dystopian fiction books adapted into movies and TV shows. I made an entire video, I don't know where I'm gonna put it, but I'll put it somewhere. I made an entire video about how the Hunger Games inspired a decade of movies and TV shows and books and games. And the 100 came during that fad that lost steam many, many, many years ago, but the 100 just kept on going.
God damn, Jimmy. This some serious gourmet shit.
And I myself was a big fan of it, and even when I stopped being a fan of it, I kept coming back and back and back. Every single season I would come back just being like, man, I gotta see what's going on now, until it finally ended with season 7. And I've always been curious as to why this show was as successful as it was with everything stacked against it, and I finally came to my conclusion. So like I said, the 100 was based off the book series by Cass Morgan, but a lot like the Game of Thrones TV show,
Shane!
much of the 100 is basically fan fiction, as it goes far, far beyond where the book story actually goes. I think that is definitely to its benefit. But the way the 100 starts out is it is a story of an irradiated Earth from a nuclear fallout, with humanity living up on what they call the Ark up in outer space to live it out over generations of time until the world becomes habitable again and the radiation levels go down. And on the Ark, every single crime is punishable by immediate death for the fact that they need population control and to limit all of their supplies and medicine to those that only need it and listen to the rules. But they will not kill minors, anybody under the age of 18, so minors are put in jail, juvie or whatever, until they are 18 years old, and then they are floated, what they call being killed, because they just send them out into space to die a horrible, horrible death. But because the Ark is running out of supplies, and most importantly air, they decide they are going to send the 100 miners down to the ground of Earth to make sure that it is livable before they send down all the adults, because they're all great people. Now, why do I think that this show is as successful as it is and kept going on for 7 seasons, even though everybody says that they kind of lost steam on the 100, but always came back? And that is because of the drastic changes that this show has from season to season. Now, it's not unusual for a TV show to change drastically between seasons. It's called plot and it's called story development. I mean, you look at Riverdale, which is also a CW show, and every single season has big changes.
That means you haven't known the triumphs and defeats, the epic highs and lows of high school football. But you will.
But the 100 was one of the earliest to do it so drastically, but also keep the story moving in a very forward direction that, for the most part, makes sense. It does get a little bonkers towards the end, but I'll get there. Every single season changed so much of the story that you had to come back and see why that was. Think of that season of Riverdale that did a 5-year time jump. Or think of that season of Parks and Recreation that also did a 5-year time jump. Or many other TV shows that for whatever reason do a 5-year time jump. They do that because they lose steam, viewers aren't coming back, and they're like, we need to do something big, so they change up the entirety of the show. The 100 did that from every single season to the next season for 7 goddamn years. And I'm going to break down the craziness that is every single one of these seasons just to make a point of how wild it is to look at it from one to another right after each other. So let's get going. So I gave you the basic plot of how the show begins, but the first season of the 100 follows these miners that are down on the ground, basically living out every miner's fantasy of sex, drugs, rock and roll. And also fighting people that have lived down on Earth for generations, called grounders, that see them as a threat and want to kill them with bows, arrows, spears, and swords. So while they're down there living their sex fantasy and swimming in rivers with giant snakes or whatever.
Get out of the water now!
They're also fighting these grounders for their life. But while they're also fighting these grounders, there's like a Lord of the Flies situation going on where one character, Bellamy Blake, is trying to take off the monitoring wristband so that all the adults up in the sky think that they're all dead, so they don't come down to the ground, so they can continue being the Lord of the Flies.
I am shocked. Shocked. Well, not that shocked.
While Clark Griffin, the other girl main character, is trying to make sure that they can all come down because her mom is up there and she loves her mom. Obviously, even though she's in prison. But at the end of the season, they end up killing all the grounders and winning their war, only to be taken by men with machine guns and gas masks. Go on to season 2. So whereas season 1 was this grounded, no pun intended, war between grounders and the Lord of the Flies situation, season 2 is all about this place called Mount Weather and how these people have lived in a bunker for the 100 years that the ground has been radiated and have brought in these miners to live with them there. But it turns out that, they're evil.
Shocked.
And they're trying to take the blood from the grounders to heal the radiation poisoning of them and then decide, hey, we're going to steal the bone marrow from these miners that have lived in space because they're extra good at fighting off radiation so that we can all go out there. But on top of that, the adults from space have decided to ride down the entire arc, smash it into Earth, and luckily they happen to land exactly where they need to.
Coincidence? I think not!
But at the end of the season, Clark makes the decision to kill every single person in Mount Weather to save her people after the leader of the grounders, who is Lexa, they have a beautiful relationship. I love Clark and Lexa.
Don't we deserve better than that? Maybe we do.
Fuck you, the 100, for having that not work. Just had to get that off my chest real quick. But anyway, Lexa betrays her to save her people from Mount Weather, so then Clark kills everybody in Mount Weather, and then that's where the season ends. So then season 3 comes along, and it turns out that there is a very advanced AI that is trying to indoctrinate everybody into the Matrix, which is called the City of Light, so that people can live out their days peacefully without the worry of all of this war that is going on. So we move on from what happened last season to now, the Matrix. No, it's just the Matrix. It is the Matrix.
You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
But when people are not getting indoctrinated into the Matrix, which is slowly taking over the entirety of the world with the help of Chancellor Jaha, who I haven't mentioned, the 12 clans are trying to unite and get Sky Crew, which is what the people from outer space are now called, indoctrinated as a 13th clan. But then at the end of the season, they find out that the reason that everybody needed to get indoctrinated to the City of Light, which failed and got shut down, is because there is another nuclear fallout that is going to happen next season. I mean, they don't say next season, but obviously that is when it's going to happen. So they need to figure that out, which is when we roll into the next season, season 4. This season is all about planning for the apocalypse, and they find an underground bunker, and all 13 clans, because now Sky Crew is part of that, all 13 clans need to figure out who is going to take over this bunker. So they devise, they're going to do a Hunger Games to figure out who is going to get to have their clan live in this bunker and who else is going to stay above ground and burn to death. Turns out Octavia wins and she said, hey, everybody gets to choose 100 people that they want to live underground and everybody else is going to die that crazy death.
You have until midnight to choose, or you all die.
But also a group of people go up into space to live out on the Ark, but Clark has to stay back and she lives on Earth. Jump to next season, season 5, and you have all the people that are living underground in the bunker who have devolved into a horrible, horrible society under the ruling of Octavia.
You are one crew, or you're the enemy of one crew. Choose.
That have had to resort to gladiator matches and cannibalism.
All of him. For all of us.
Jesus Christ.
You have the people that have lived in outer space for the last 6 years, living off of fungus or something. Then you have Clark, who has adopted a little girl that also survived the radiation. And then you also have a group of miners that come from space and land on the ground, have been in cryosleep for hundreds of years, so have no idea that there have been 2 nuclear fallouts.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
There's a very big war that goes on between all these different people until eventually one of them decides to nuke the planet again, and everybody that can escapes into outer space and decides, oh geez, this is at least this nuclear fallout, this third nuclear fallout is only going to take 10 years, so let's just go into a cryo sleep. Move on to season 6, the second to last season, then you find out that they weren't in cryosleep for 10 years. They were in cryosleep for 125 years. And two of the people that stayed awake not only had a kid and had that kid go into cryosleep when they were 20, but they took them to an alien planet that is supposed to be habitable, so they all wake up 125 years later and go down to this alien planet. Okay, think back to where we were in the beginning of this show. Now we're on an alien planet, 131 years in the future and some change, I think. They get down there and they found out that this planet is already inhabited by humans that have been inhabiting it ever since the very first nuclear fallout, at this point, like nearly 300 years ago. But there's these people that are called primes that have been transferring their consciousness from one person to the next person to the next person that is part of the original crew of people that inhabited this planet, and they're just body snatching people under the guise that they are gods of some kind. On top of that, there's this weird green energy anomaly going on that is slowly taking over the planet, but we're going to ignore that for now. What's very important is that everybody is killing everybody and everybody's killing other people. The primes are pretending to be part of the grounders and the 100, and the 100 and the grounders are pretending to be part of the primes, until eventually the primes are mostly all killed off and our main characters remain victorious, having murdered all of the primes, and decide that they are going to live out their days happily on this alien planet.
What do we do now? What do you mean? Now we can finally play the game.
But not really, because there's still one more season left. Let's go into season 7. Remember that weird green anomaly I told you about last season? Well, it turns out that's a wormhole to another planet where time works differently. But we find out that this is a much more advanced society that had originally built that bunker on Earth that everybody survived in, that Octavia was ruling over for those 6 years during the second nuclear fallout. And there's half a dozen wormholes to half a dozen different other planets, and there's wars that are breaking out between all of these different people on all these different planets. And they do this thing called the Last War, which they believe will give them transcendence into the afterlife and ever-loving peace and happiness. But it turns out that this is actually a test, and there is a super advanced alien race that is giving this test to other alien races, including now the humans that they have triggered, to let them have transcendence and ever-loving happiness among all these other alien races. Clark decides to take this test to try and get humans indoctrinated into it.
So your need for revenge is more important than the fate of the entire human race?
It's not revenge. It's justice.
And the aliens are like, no, God, no, you are murder. You are a horrible murderer. You have killed so many people ruthlessly. You think you are a good representative for the world and humans? No, you are a monster. And then Raven is like, hey, can I take the test? And the alien's like, no. And Raven's like, please? And they're like, okay. And then it turns out that she showed them a battle that was going on, and then everybody was like, hey, this sucks, let's not fight anymore. So they're like, okay, we won't. And then everybody transcends into something. They're with the aliens now, and they're gonna have peace and happiness forever, except for all the main characters who decide to live out their years with Clark on Earth. The end. All right, so I've been talking for a while now, and I got very into it because I do love this show, but I really think that proves my point about the drasticness this show takes. You look at season 1, which granted was a pretty extreme post-apocalyptic sci-fi, but then you take it to season 7, where the transcending with alien races after cryosleep and multiple wars and 3 nuclear fallouts, and they're getting indoctrinated into an alien society where people live in peace forever. And this show is goddamn wild from season to season, and I believe that is why it has remained so successful season to season and kept on the air as long as it did after the fad of these types of shows and movies was over. But thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, check out my other videos.